long break today because my cough was really bugging me and I didn't want to deal with it. I'm beginning to think it's not just a cold. I think it's actually something local here called valley fever. Except for one thing, that I've gotten it a few times, and it's supposed to be if you get it, you're immune. So, I don't know. I've had this kind of nagging 2-week cough, bad post-nasal drip, all that crap, multiple times since I've been here. And it feels like you're sick, but not quite. I don't know. Anyway. Gustavus is going to open things up with a pursuit. First thing I got to do is I got to burn 3 of the points. That's why I need this big card here. And now I just come charging down. I'm going to eat when it gets around to that. I obviously am going to be above 50 points, so I'm going to be eating 5 points, but I've got tons of food. And our friends, the Imperials, now are faced with just the problem with this entire campaign for them from now on, which is, wow, we can't face that. Maybe we can run away and it'll send a part of itself out to handle us, but as of right now, we really cannot handle it. And I forgot to hand out the chips. I'm going to have to roll the chips up because it's possible I have a surprise attack. Actually, I do. I think Gustavus pulled it a 5. No, Bernard? Bernard had it. So he's going to blow his chip, and he gets an attack. Now, had the Imperials had the initiative chit, they might have played it, but they don't have one that allows them to grab the initiative. They might have played it to get out of there in time. But instead, we're going to have another big battle, and honestly, we might have like a 10-minute video here because if this army is trimmed down as much as I think it's going to be, we got nothing going for us. There's a certain level of sameness to all these battles. They all kind of divide up the same way. The only question is, hey, does the defender want to react to the attacker's positioning to match it, or do they want to, either reverse it if there's a wing heavy on one side as the attacker, or do they want to do that themselves, make one wing heavy against the other side, or do they want to balance? Just a few things like that. But otherwise, the battles have a sameness to them. Now, look, this is a more complicated battle system than rolling a die on a CRT would be, so those are really the same, right? On the other hand, there's a little bit of effort here that isn't in the others. No chits down. The Imperials have a neat little advantage here. There's no leaders because no chits, right? I mean, the leaders will take their death chances. The interesting thing here is that the Imperials, after having suffered so badly, actually still have a numerical advantage of some degree, in part because of their resilience. If you recall, I had nice strength in terms of the Swedes. It was about parity. Well, it's still about parity here. Anyway, so it could be anybody's battle. And the Swedes actually could lose quite a bit. But they've got this humongous artillery barrage coming in, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, 40 plus a die. But I don't know if it was worth attacking. A surprise attack doesn't give you anything except forcing. So only 41 on the artillery fire. That's 11 steps. Now that's going to wipe this out. I think there's still going to be a battle fought there. That's what I have to look up. But, if I get lucky on one of the other wings, I pretty much have a victory here as the Swedes. So now, if you've ever played a musket and pike game, if somehow the center disappeared like this, especially through ranged fire or whatever, as exposed here, these guys would come forward and do an outflank in one direction or another. Yes, they're not as maneuverable as the Cav, but man, they can apply some pressure to one side or the other. Just like, there are times when the whole line advances at once and a flank doesn't develop as an advantage for one side or the other until the end of the game. And so, again, the design mechanism for the game. The only way that you don't get a flank attack that's of significance is if essentially both sides wipe each other out. So it's not quite, unless I'm playing something wrong, that's always possible. So yeah. Any unsatisfied step losses. The victorious player from the right may use any remaining cav regiments. Oh, I've been throwing the infantry in on that. Can't do that. Okay, well, they usually haven't been making up very much of it. So anyway, we do a quick counting here. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 19. And here, oh, I think I put a little bit more weight over here. 10, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 26, and 8 is 34. I'm not smoking because it seems to aggravate it, but it isn't the problem here. Okay. 19 for the Swedes. 19 and 9. Nice rolling, guys. We're going to be doing 8 hits to them. And 34, yeah, and 5 gives us to 39. They're going to do 11 hits. So that's going to be an Imperial victory over here. 11 hits, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, wipes out the wing. The 8 hits, well, I'm going to take as much of that on infantry as I can. I can't. I got a couple of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 has to be taken. 7, 8. So I'm still going to have a significant force coming in this way. That more than makes up for this. Here we ended up with 21 to 28. And we'll see what we get. 21 plus 6 is 27. That's going to be 8 hits. So we're going to lose that wing too, and probably the center as well. Not a good choice to attack, I guess. And it's a shame. I could have reinforced instead. Or oh well. Ooh, well, that's not so good. 28. That's 8 hits as well. Okay, we got to think about this. Because the tiebreaker here, the first choice is number of hits, but then we got to go to tiebreaker. Okay, whoever's the largest remaining wing is tied. And then there's like other conditions, so maybe they're in a different order here because it doesn't have all the conditions. And I don't trust these rules enough to not have found an error. And I'm not sure each type of battle has exactly the same type. Okay. If all of the units are eliminated, else the winner is the one who scored the most hits, or if tied, then the highest modified dice roll, or else remaining largest infantry or cav steps. As opposed to not here, they left out the die roll completely from this. Again, you know, the standard of not a matching between the different components in the game. I'm going to go with the rules here because the other one doesn't even mention it. So who had the highest die roll? Well, that's the Swedes. That gives them, basically this gives them a chance to win, but not if they got wiped out, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the case. Uh-oh. Okay, and we want to kill the infantry while we can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are double units. And after I clean these up, we're going to have all these cav hitting that small amount of infantry, probably capturing all the guns, and that's probably the end of Gustavus's army. Pretty much guaranteed here. 32 strength points to 11. There's only cav left in the Imperial army, which, even though their centers completely collapsed, they still get to fight this. So we flip the rule book around a little bit more. Let's take that 11 and see what we do. We do 2 hits. And 32 plus 1. Wrong die. 9 hits. That wipes the Swedes out. 2 hits over here. The best we can find are crappy cav. I'll take a double cav to get it out of the way. And all the artillery falls. The battle is a victory. It's a major victory. That's like, what, 15 points. I get some fatigue points, but who cares? I get all the food. And now Tortenson's going to come. On top of that, I fought with a couple of Bavarians hiding behind my back that I wasn't using. The lesson I learned from that, other than that, you know, the Swedes are a little bit more brittle than the Imperial Army, is actually that artillery is deceptive. Because I took fair amounts of losses here, but I'm only 4 steps less than I was. And this is what happened with the Swedes. Because they captured all that artillery, they ended up pretty big still. You know, they were in the 40 range with that army, but much of it was this artillery. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It looks like 10 of them, so that's 20 steps right there. That was half the points in their army. Whereas this had 39-point army with no artillery. So, but now it's a 35-point army with 20 of it artillery. And I know better, and I have no idea what all this shit is. Crap that got left behind. All right, let's just throw it in some army or another. This leaving patrols on the map outside their army is really bound for errors for me. And it's a guarantee that there's going to be problems. We're going to assume those are cav detachments that made it back to their armies just now. So I've got some reinforcement cards and such not that I want to use. But right now I have to burn off that fatigue. This is a big card I can do that with. So I paid 3 out of it for fatigue. And I'm moving up here and launching a siege over on Nuremberg. Nuremberg's a normal fortress or a mighty fortress? It looks like it's a strong fortress. Yeah, okay. It's a strong fortress, which, you know, my food is not going to last me the whole time, but this is my goal here. Right now I've got about equal victory points, a little bit of an advantage for the Imperials, but the Swedes have no army. So, we have to do some counts. First of all, a strong fortress over here has inherent firepower of artillery of 3. Well, I have more than 2 to 1, so I'm going to get the bonus for that. What is the garrison here? That's of some tremendous importance. The garrison is a 6-point garrison. I hope I'm allowed to have something that big there. Yep. Okay. So it's big, which means I'm going to need above an 8. I have a stratagem, though, that's +3. I have artillery superior, +4. I have a dynamic leader. I think it's just once for it, so I have +5. My column is not 50 or more steps, even though with the baggage train it is. But so that's +5. But this is a strong fortress. That puts me down to +2. So I need a 7 or more to take this. Otherwise, we set up the siege. And we spent a BP as well as a command point for this. I do not get a 7 or more, which means one of these reject markers is here. Good thing there wasn't one already there. And now we start setting up the siege counters. We'll call this siege 1. Again, I should have these stacked by their number. I'll put it, I'm not going to put it under the unit because then I won't know where it is. Siege works required is huge. It's 34. And right now I have none. I haven't started anything. And then I have to feed myself. I haven't paid for that yet. I'm a big column with all that baggage, so these go away. I'm going to have to discard a card, but first the Swedes get to play their card. One way to win the game, which is overburdened with artillery, has all the yummies, right? Let's go. All right. And the commanders, you know, when a commander gets wounded, not that it matters too much, but where I can find with the commanders, it doesn't really say where they go if they're just, if their army's wiped out. I can't find anything about that, so I just threw them in with the nearest army, which, you know, if I had any chits that helped, that would be valuable. Now here's the thing, the Imperials can refuse battle here, but they won't be able to continue the siege if they do so, so that may be their best move. Okay, so we move 1 here, 2 we're going to forge with the Scorched Earth bonus, which is +2, and +2 for size is +4. We get 4 food. I don't know if this is going to be over. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 we're going to declare an attack, and we have to drop a food for that. We're a medium-sized force, so we're okay even if we're refused battle here. So, and that's what the Imperials have to choose here. Do they want to fight or not? They know what the attackers got. They know it's 36 steps, almost none of it artillery. On the other hand, none of it's infantry either. So we're going to chance this because all of our weight is on the wings. We have no center whatsoever. And that's fine, because we're going to disintegrate their center with our artillery. So actually it's not completely unreasonable. If you have this much firepower versus this kind of army, yeah, it's not going to even be able to approach in the center. But of course it will approach and it will get destroyed. So now the Swedes, as the attackers, have to do their repositioning first, which they're allowed to pull half their infantry off the line. And we have kind of a balanced force approach because we don't control who wins the wing to begin with. And now for the Imperials, well, they can now react, shifting their cav to one side or the other. This is a hard call, so I need to look at my numbers here. 3, 6, 9, 3, 4, 5, 15, 24 here to 8, 13, only 19. So I think I want to shift half my cav out of here. So this is, these are the big units. I think 1, 2, 3. Let's take more damage over here because we're just going to surrender this side. All right. Probably should have refused. There was not another surprise attack chit. There wasn't a card which allowed an automatic attack. So the artillery, well, you know. The Swedish artillery can't do anything. The Imperial artillery is 10 times 4 is 40. 45, it's 12 hits. That's 5, 10. Boom, there goes the Swedish infantry. Okay, but now the wings. And we do the attacker's right wing first. Not that it matters too much. So that's 5. And 12 is 17, 23, facing 8. Now, of course, the Swedes could have set up disproportionate as well, but had they done so, that would give the Imperials the chance to buckle away even stronger, you know, onto the side that the Swedes didn't take. So at 23-8, the Swedes come in at 25. They do 7 hits. And over here, 10, we do 1. Well, we'll take an infantry because we can't use those in the battle. And 7 hits will wipe these out. Okay. But on this side, 9 and 15 is 24. This was the heavier wing, even though I think we dispositioned kind of, we threw an extra infantry that way. 8, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 24, 30. Not a guarantee. Okay, so the Swedes at 24, 7 hits. And 30, like I wish on a tied roll, on a tied value or something, you just didn't get to go forward. I don't know. 30 is 9 hits. So nobody did very well here. That's going to give them the advantage, though. They're going to be able to swing their cav in, and we'll see what happens. So, 7 hits on this. Well, this is weaker than it once was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The cav's disintegrating. I should not have fought this. 9 hits. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we'll take an infantry because infantry are clearly less valuable than cav. We're out of there. Now up the middle, nobody's got anything there. They're just going to clash the cav here. 5 and 12 is 17. To 6, 10, 14, 20. 17, 25. I do 7 hits. And 23. I do 6 hits. The Imperials lose. These come off of only these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because there's nothing left in the center. And 7 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This was a minor battle, or a minor victory, because it was 2 out of 3, which I think means I get to keep my artillery and my wagons if I only retreat 1 space. I've forgotten was this recruiting from prisoners. If you win a battle, you're allowed to buy new units immediately. Now, I could have done that with the Imperials anyway, but I wouldn't have had to play it shit. But I didn't do that because I knew I had to burn off points. On the other hand, maybe I would have played a different card in order to handle that. And there have been a couple of other battles where maybe I would have wanted to recruit. It hasn't been happening, but I did kind of want to do the stratagem, see if I could capture the city. I didn't realize how much danger I was in there. So now somewhere or another, first of all, we get 2 fatigue points. Didn't record that. I spent my points for the Scorched Earth. I'm looking for, there we go. Column that win for a minor victory. See, this is worded in a way that does not keep it as sparse as possible. They repeat the same kind of thing. They could balance it out and say the same thing in less words. Yeah. So I can retreat one space and not abandon my goods, which I really don't want to do because this army is not in any position to do much at this point after burning off 2 cards. But now we should have flipped units. Oh, Horn died. It doesn't matter. He's no better than anything else. So I have to get rid of a card. That poor Forage looks like a good card to get rid of. This one looks even possibly worse. Let's get rid of this cheap card. And that's not the expected results, from the stance that I was looking at any given time. Things very, very swingy. I'm not sure a decent play. So it doesn't feel historical there, but I'm not sure a reasonable player would have made the choices that I've made there in terms of, standing for the battle with the Imperials in that case, or previously launching the attack. Wait, I don't remember who did what. I'm losing track. So. Did Gustavus launch the first attack? Yeah, Gustavus's pursuit attack was probably a bad choice. I should have spent that recruiting prisoners or spending it, there's nothing else that I should have done. I should have been recruiting prisoners and getting my army back to handle. But my feeling was, hey, I just defeated the enemy. He's on the run. It's time to hit him. Well, that doesn't work here. And I'm not too bothered that it doesn't work very well because the armies tended not to go charging after one another after a victory. They tended to sit around recovering their fatigue points and recouping after the battle. What's a little strange is that only the victor is penalized at all, so that the attacker the loser could come right back. But the victor has the chance not only to recover fatigue points, but to get some recovery from the prisoners as well. So if they play a big card, they can kind of be in a better position. That I'm not so sure I believe terribly much, which is oh yeah, we just lost a battle, but now we're at an advantage because we had a less brittle army, so we're coming back and hitting, next week just as hard. I can't think of an example of something like that. In fact, I can't think of any example of what I just did, but I don't think that's good play. But I could see good play in terms of the Swedes not being the ones initiating the next battle, but actually the Imperials doing so because they had this numeric advantage of their troop strength, which quickly showed up. All right. Now the Swedes have kind of a problem here as well. They have no food. They were hoping to capture this big supply pile. They didn't do it. They've got 2 fatigue points they've got to burn off. They don't have time to recuperate units because they need food. Now, I can look at my size, and that's probably wrong. 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13. That's down to 15. And make that 16. So I'm going to be the smallest sized unit. So I might be able to get by with the 1 food that I have. Let's see. Tactical advantage was what I wanted to do because that would let me sit here safely and not worry about an attack from a force that really can't attack me. So I can hold off on that. That's not really necessary. Scorched Earths, I'd like to hold. Reinforcements, I'd like to hold. This is a possibility. Possibility. Okay. So I think what we want to do is we want to play one of these. We're not planning on picking up BPs from anywhere. So we're going to drop this. Now, as far as I know, when you lose... Yeah. So I haven't been paying attention to this. I think when you abandon the BPs and artillery, they're actually abandoned in the space rather than rather than captured. Another little fiddly bit that I didn't catch, and it could have gone either way. Okay, so this, I have to burn 2 for this. I'm not going to find any food here, but I've got a BP that I can spend on recruitment, which we'll quickly do. And then I have to eat my last food. And that means I got to get moving next turn, but at least I don't take any losses this turn. Likewise, the Imperials probably want to get out of there. They're not this big either, but they're actually pretty big. They're at 21. Imperials played a big card, the Cav bonus. They are almost a Cav column, but not quite. They have all this artillery with them. But it gave me 5 movement points, which let me do a forage here and then hide behind the river. I'm kind of safe behind the river, unless the city just surrenders on an approach. And then some discards. The reason I wanted to do that foraging was to get a half victory point. It wasn't that I needed food. I have too much food. I forgot to spend it though. Swedes hand things off to the Imperials and say, hey, you're going first, which means the Imperials are going to build reinforcements. I got 5 CPs here. Okay. One of them upgrades this. 3 of them and a BP will get me another veteran Cav, a damaged one. So now I'm at 4, and the 5th one puts me here. And then I have to eat 5 food. Little number chits are really fucking annoying. So every time I look, I have to look up, okay, well, banner. You know, I mean, you know the process, but it's just really fucking obnoxious to have to look it up each time. I understand perhaps a desire to have that translation capability, but if GMT wasn't planning on putting out a foreign edition of this anyhow, and it's not like they couldn't do what AWE does and say, okay, well, there's a French word on here, but you can match that. It's as easy as looking up the numbers, but and you start to get used to what the French words mean because, you know, they're related languages, right? You know, obviously there are going to be people who aren't going to be able to capture anything from it, but the worst that they get is a slightly larger annoyance than the number lookups. The number lookups are obnoxious as all hell, and if they just had a word on them, you know, the word that's here would be enough. Forced march, well, yeah, that doesn't really help me right now. Gustavus, 5, I don't know. Recruiting. Well, maybe I want to do that. You know, maybe I have a big card that's not a recruiting card. I need to find food, though. Food shortages have caused them to split into 2 columns. Gustav's main column is over here, and you can see I'm spreading Cav all over the place, which, of course, I'm going to probably forget and leave somewhere. And then I sent a tiny little Cav column out. And no bonus for the Cav this time, but just to collect up some food. It hasn't worked terribly well. I might have been just fine keeping it together because it's a small column anyway, so it doesn't need a lot of food, but I'm hoping to actually come back with a surplus, and I'm gaining some. But it is somewhat risky spreading out like this. And then I have to do reinforcement and stuff and build up an army again. So that's kind of what's going on right now, is both sides are trying to build up an army so they can engage again. But now, hey, he's out there, he's got his Cav deployed. Maybe we want to go smack him. Well, we don't have initiative. Both armies are gathering up forces as well as supplies, although supplies are less of an important thing for the Imperials, but still, hey, if I'm given the opportunity to do so, I might as well. I've been concentrating on Cav because it's better on the battles, but I ought to be thinking about infantry as well, simply because, well, I guess I built an infantry there that I didn't see. Simply because that's more useful in the sieges. And that's really where we're going to see victory points at this point, unless and until the two armies clash again, which right now looks somewhat unlikely, but it's hard to tell. As they build up, they might well find that, hey, we want to interfere with one another again. Right now, they could be doing that, but if you're traveling to go face the enemy, well, they're able to recruit during that time. Now, recruitment's limited. You either have to have a card or a chit. Wallenstein used a chit. Gustav used a card. Gustav, I think, has a chip that allows him to do it, but again, that requires me to do this stupid lookup thing, which is just really obnoxious. Get in the habit of flipping units face, on their side to indicate that they've moved or done their actions. That may end up causing some problems at some point, but right now, it's easier than trying to track it with these. I go at the beginning of the turn and they're flipped over and everything. Things on the board are easy to recognize and to react and cope with. As we finish things up for the April turn, and the turns are probably going to kind of fly by if there aren't going to be a lot of engagements. A little bit more recruitment over here for Gustavus. He didn't even use his chit. He had a reinforcements card. But he's got to be careful. He's got to move around and resupply because he doesn't have a lot of food on board. The Imperial tactic for reinforcing is actually going to be to try to scoop up some of these garrisons. They can't completely denude them, but they can take, a single infantry regiment out and leave a detachment behind. A significant portion of both sides' forces start the board on the game as these garrisons. So you do have troops that you can scoop up fairly easily. But they may not be in the easiest place to get to. So for example, the Imperial troops, a lot of them are down here, and for the Swedes, a lot of them are up here, neither of which is really at the front. You might want to scoop them up early in the game and move them forward. The problem is then you have big columns, and that might not be the optimal situation. Leaders are a weird situation because I don't think they can move without a column, and there don't seem to be any rules for that, so you can't send a leader off to go start a column and grab your units. If you drop a leader off, you can, but I don't see any rules about leaders being able to run around on their own, which kind of sucks. Again, something that feels like it probably should be part of the game rather than I mean, there's no definition as to where the leaders go after a battle if their force is destroyed, though. So, at least not that I found, and that's far more disturbing in terms of things that are just missing. A couple of worries about what might be causing my coughing. So, I haven't started smoking yet today. When I first wake up, I feel fine, and then it starts to come in, and the nose and everything else. And I think it's standing or sitting or and being active that are the problem. But I cut off the smoking, and I'll end up having to at some point probably. But I also cut the air conditioning off. I have worries that maybe there's something in the venting, because this really started when I started turning the AC on, I think, but it's hard to tell. Anyway, speaking of but I'm gonna have to turn the AC on. It's going up to stupid hot today, and only 108 this time. So Gustavus did not. He decided to punt, and in terms of going first, he's got the initiative. So the Imperials have to play this card, and they have to play it on their largest column, which is this one here, and then it's going to affect everything in the space, and it must be played in the first round. So it's going to have to roll a die and take half that many step losses. Now, Strangely, this is worse if you're a small column. You would think an epidemic would be really bad for the biggest column, but it just is more likely to affect the biggest column. So we got a 4, which means all of our steps are destroyed, and we no longer are a column. All this artillery and crap is just going to sit there. Of course, Wallenstein and company all go somewhere. Somewhere. The only somewhere that I can think of. And now there's a big pile of stuff. If the Swedes can get there, they can pick it up. Difficulty with that, of course, is crossing the river. I went for this strong town. The only thing that I could reasonably take easily, although actually Ulm has special rules where it could fall, but then I start the revolt if I take that. So I was hoping to force my way through here. It didn't work, and now I've got a siege underway. But that's okay. And the Cav column can go build forces up. I just so outnumber the Imperials at this point. The Imperials are down to a Cav unit, and that's it. Not that I really know that, but I know that their main force has just disappeared. That had to be their biggest force, and there was very little in it. So that I know that there's very little in that. Whereas I have a fairly sizable force at this point. So, you know, if I can bust my way through, I don't really need too many reinforcements or whatever. I can finish off the Imperial column. All right, next round. Imperials creep their way forward. They're not a Cav column anymore, so that doesn't help them. But they wanted a lot of points so that they could gather up more food. I'm not really sure why, but the Cav column over here moved, and we actually used the impressed local labor to get most of the siege works built. We're up to 6 out of 10. So, you know, we're not going to be able to capture all those guns and supplies, but at least we'll be where we can get some victory points and maybe hit the army. The problem, of course, for the Imperials is not enough troops. They'll have a lot of guns and be able to do a lot of damage with those, but they're going to lose whatever battle it is as long as they don't have a fair-sized army. So not only do I have to pick that up, but I have to start doing some recruiting. But the Swedes probably want to recruit as well, so, you know, may have a little bit of time there. A couple card plays. The Imperials play a Cav bonus card. No bonus because I've got infantry with me. I'm not really heading for this. This is how I'm representing that huge depot of artillery and stuff. I don't want those piles on the board. I don't really have to pick them up because the Swedes aren't making their way across. So I used a recruitment action, got myself a little bit more strength. And then for the Swedish second card, or first card, Cav bonus, to get this in place so that I could dump a bunch of supplies off. Now I had two options. I could either join Gustavus's force, in which case I guess he doesn't need to eat because he ends up finished, so I don't have to play a card for him or something. Or I could do what I did, which is to drop off most of the supplies. He's going to spend an action to pick them up. His own action, I thought he could forage, but then I noticed, oh, I must have had an anti-forage marker here. I assume this one's down here and not up there, so it looks like that one's open, but who knows. It's one problem with this point-to-point map. It's really, so the bubbles would help here because they could contain these items. I'm happier with the appearance of this map, but the items that are off the board, or that are on the map, aren't clearly delineated by where they are. Now they could be sitting on a point, but then you can't tell what's in the point, so it's kind of no matter what, you have some kind of decision trade-off to make as a player. So I might as well play the poor forage because I'm going to need lots of points and there's no way I can forage here. The reason I need points, well, I need one to scoop these up. And then I can spend, how big am I? Probably not big enough. So I'm dealing with a something that I can't see. I'm dealing with a something that I can't remember. Strong town. Okay, so if I have 12 infantry step points, I get a better deal. But I only have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It might behoove me to take reinforcements instead at this point. But 7. If I spend 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, geez. Strong town, I bet you it has artillery that I've not been paying attention to. And I have artillery, too. Oh, well. So I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Spend the rest of these. Pretty much guarantee myself a shot upward. Now, we get our artillery fire here. And I have a 4 strength artillery, which doesn't do anything, and they have 1 strength of artillery, which doesn't do anything. So I've exceeded this, which means I can call on them to surrender once more before I assault. They have a 3-point garrison in a strong town. That's going to be this column. I'm artillery superior, that gives me +1. It's final surrender, +2, dynamic, +3. So I'm at +2 on that 3 or more. And I get a 6, which gives me an 8. They're going to accept, and that means these guys withdraw to the nearest place they can, which looks like it's Ingolstadt if it can hold them. That's a fortress, and a fortress can hold 6 steps. So they're going to be allowed to go there. This goes away. I've got to come up with a garrison for that. And I've got to get, by the way, I have one of these counters here in case I run low on the tactile. I've got to get my victory points too, which is going to be 6 victory points for that. 4 puts me up to 10. So I'm starting to kind of pull away here. And our pieces back up, they were all lying down, crossed, and all kind of weird stuff. One thing that I'm seeing here, I mean, I kind of harp on the historical accuracy. Like I said, there's significant attempts to make it historically accurate. It's just they don't all kind of fit together properly and work. So it kind of gives the feel, even though there's more steps and complexity, of sort of an AT type game, or some of the other games that were handled on this period that I've seen. It's not a bad level of accuracy in the sense that, if you take the 1,000-foot view, hey, we've got kind of the type of view that 30 Years War, Europe in Agony gives, or that I think is appropriate, with forces, worrying about their forage locations, the way they kind of blunder around. It all feels very appropriate in terms of the overall effect, the big random combat, etc. It's just that this captures levels of detail that begin to show the weaknesses. And I guess that's kind of where my griping comes in more, is that there's just a little bit too much detail. So for example, if you got rid of the battle board and handled this some other way, all my battle board complaints would go away. I don't think it accurately represents a battle in the era. There was something else, and then there's, of course, the places where the rules aren't filled out enough, like what happens to the leaders when, their command is destroyed or whatever. But beyond that, it largely holds together. It's just that when you start seeing things that are specifically handled in some detail, and this may be as part of my objection to some of the other games in the era, a couple of them called Holy Roman Empire or 30 Years War, some magazine games that came out. Holy Roman Empire, I did recently, it was a card game. There's another one called Holy Roman Empire, though, and then there's one called 30 Years War, and they all cover the same pretty much topic. And they all kind of get it, but then some levels of detail or whatever are handled there, and they're not handled well. And you look at them and say, wow, that's glaringly a problem. So far, the best that I've seen is really the CDG Europe in Agony in terms of handling everything. This comes close. In terms of overall effect, it does a very good job on a different level, the operational level. And of course, there's also the fact that anything at operational level kind of causes problems for me. So I'm looking at this and saying, how interesting is it going to be to do year after year after year with no interconnecting, framework for it? And this is really the problem that I have with Freddy the Great. Although that I can see putting an interconnecting framework to handle a grand campaign that handles the whole 7 Years' War. Here, you've got a problem because this is just one little slice, one little area, and the forces that are moving through it are forces that are moving through it for reasons that aren't entirely based on this location. There are outside political events and outside, even military effects that are causing the troops to move through here. And it just doesn't terribly, it just doesn't lend itself well to that campaign level. So what you have is a bunch of scenarios that to me look like they're going to probably all feel pretty much the same. We'll see. We'll give more of them a shot. I don't know how many. We're continuing with this too, but even though I think the Imperials have no chance here, they're losing in points. They have the tinier army. And I just don't see a way of them recuperating in time to be able to face Gustavus. The question is just, hey, does this tiny army get destroyed or not? Constantine and Gustavus both rallied additional troops to their cause, and the Cav column went out picking up supplies again. I can push through without stopping here at Ingolstadt, but I was too far, or Munich. Well, Munich, yeah, Munich's not a problem because I can come up this way. I don't have to cross this stream, which is apparently the same effect as the major river, because there is no stream here and there's no rules for it and all this, that, and the other. And I mean, this is the Isar. It's not a tiny river, but it's not the Danube. And I guess, eventually, though, we're going to come crashing through. Augsburg, I can take safely using the special surrender rules for this scenario, but I didn't have enough manpower, so I kind of needed to recruit enough men. So I'm kind of planning on picking that up on the way in, and then figuring out where I want to go from there in terms of points. Hey, wait a minute. I get a half point because I knocked it to a 1 first, and then I get another full point because I knocked it to a 2. That's raiding going on in Swabia there. And we're almost at the end of the turn and also the season. Again, I think I could surrender, but I thought that I could give this game up for lost with both sides already at various points. So, I just... It just has such a tremendous capability to swing. Now, it's always swung against the guy with the artillery because they look potent but aren't as potent as they look. And right now the Imperials are the ones sort of with the artillery. I mean, obviously, if this thing engages without the artillery, it's hosed. Augsburg surrenders without a fight using the special rules. They are not affected by the uprising, however, that's only if Ulm is occupied via that rule. For some unknown reason, I have absolutely no idea why it would only be Ulm. It's really if what it should be, in my opinion, is if the Swedes go into Swabia and or Bavaria, they're in trouble. You know, they're going to suffer from it. But anyway, that was a fortress, so it was worth some 15 victory points as well as food, etc. And we can see the Imperials grabbed their artillery and the food there. That puts us to the end of the turn. We're going to load this one up. And the devastation goes away. And we're dealing out new cards and probably having to reshuffle again. All right, so this is what? May 30th. This is kind of annoying because each time I go away and start a new, I start a new video, I end up in a position where it looks like the game's going to end, or essentially end. Of course, I knew that before I left, but with the fall of whatever was here, sub-city, Augsburg. With the fall of Augsburg, we're in a position where, hey, you know, all right, we got a few choices. We could go attack right away, and Wallenstein, his name just escaped me, and that's what that. Anyway, we could attack right away. Great, you know. But he has a defensive position, and he may have chits and such not that help him. Our own chits don't really. We have a bombard chit for Gustavus. He has one little artillery, so he's going to get, you know, a little bit more damage off his artillery than he would otherwise, but he's facing a lot of enemy artillery. Now, I don't know exactly what the size of that force is anymore, but I do know mine's not too big. And on the other hand, I think I'm bigger because I can look. But there's a lot of guns there, and that much I do know. I can bring my cav in. I actually have a card that allows me to get everything together. The surprise attack, it's big enough that I can get it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I can actually do something on the way. Alternatively, because there isn't a whole hell of a lot of cav, and I can grab one of them anyway, I do have a couple of reinforcement cards. Okay, I thought I didn't have any of those, and I was kind of not going to do anything because, you know, I was kind of going to launch the attack simply because if I'm not going to get any bigger, because I had no chits for reinforcements, then maybe I don't want to fight the battle at this point. Okay, so I think what I'll do is I'll sit here and I'll reinforce. My other options were to start a siege somewhere, but that kind of opens up this whole, well, then Wallenstein gets to attack me when he wants to. Of course, I have a defensive bonus if I've actually got the siege started, and it might be the best thing I can do. I have enough manpower for, well, I'm one short for Munich, I'm one short for Ingolstadt. I'm short on infantry. I need one more infantry to be able to start the siege. All right, so yeah, we'll reinforce, and I think we'll do that right away because we're within striking range. Wallenstein's going to actually launch the attack. He plays a 4 tactical advantage. His size is horrible here, if that's correct. It can't be. I got a whole bunch of this. So 2, 4, 6, 7, but I've got all this too, which is another 20. Still, I'm a 7 size unit, and I'm facing a 23 if you don't count their artillery, which I don't know. This is going to give me a tactical advantage, but I lose the one I've got moving. I'll move forward 1, 2, grab this, depleted. Three, 4. Now I've got to eat probably a big amount. I'm at 27. I think there's more than 23 there. So I'll throw these here for. They're not spent yet, because if I lose this battle, they don't happen to me. I've got a tactical advantage from that, and I also have an aggressiveness for Tilly that's going to give me a tactical advantage. We'll pull the battle board out. I think it's almost guaranteed the Swedes win this and probably the game, and we'll pack this one in if the Imperial Army dissolves there. Another option would have been to walk around trying to pick up the, I couldn't get that. There's some crap here that I could grab. There's more forces back here. But honestly, the Swedes are going to get so many points. I've got to trim them down to my size. I'm hoping this works, but it won't. So here's our battle situation. And we've already divided the forces up. Everything's kind of shunted over to this side. Did I cheat? Probably. Let's see, we had this. We have an extra cav over on this flank, which we shouldn't have. Okay. Right? No, because I could send 2 over. So it works out the same. So everything's shifted over to this side. The big advantage that the Imperials have is they have the 2 tactical advantage jets. Gustavus is giving a bombard jet, which gives him an 8 for his bombard. 17, that's enough to kill infantry, and note the the artillery is unaffected by this. Whereas this 1, 2, 3, it's 40. 12 hits, 3, 6. The infantry goes. Okay, so again, no center, right? Because it's pointless to put things in the center. So we go to the right-hand side. 12 and 2 dice versus 8, 18, 21, 27, and 1 die. Well, that doesn't sound good for the Imperials, but all right, let's do their 12 and 2 dice. That gets them 22. They're going to do 6 hits, so they have lost this side already. 27, 34, we do 10 hits. 10 hits is going to wipe this out, right? These are all singles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get rid of this. And what did we take? We took 6 hits. Well, we'll take those on the infantry first, because they can't fight in the next round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we swing over here, and we've got 5 with only 1 die versus 5 with 2 dice. Okay, our 5 with 1 die might do a hit. Nope. 5 with 2 dice should do a hit. Does 5 hits. Wow. Okay, so we wipe out the Swedish cav. Alright, so now it's 1-on-1, but it's this cav and his dice versus 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12, 13, 14, no infantry. So it's actually not that ridiculously far apart. There's a 9-point spread, but an extra die, which isn't going to be 9 points, but it's not a complete blowout. All right, let's roll 1 die for the Swedes. They get nothing, so they only do 2 hits in the center. And this looks pretty good for the Imperials, actually. 9, they do no hits. All right, 2 hits is enough to wipe out the Imperials, and that's really game over. There's no Imperial army left. Everything's captured. More victory points, and basically the Swedes are going to get to wander around here, and they can rack up the score, but there's nothing else left. So, one kind of nice thing about this is I haven't started processing my video. So we're at June, let's call it 3rd, and that is the game. And, you know, I don't know if you get the same feeling that I do, because I did have some enjoyment with this, but that the next one is just going to be kind of the same thing all over again. And it's like the idea of playing, I don't know, something like Risk with starting locations, or Britannia with starting locations, or something. If there was a campaign, I would totally do it, but we've got our problems with that in terms of I don't see how they could define how a campaign could have been defined over such a small area when there's so many external factors in play. I will give it another shot. I can't guarantee I'll make it through the entire game, though. Just because, look, this took me several days, which is okay. I was counting on it taking a week or so, but I don't really view that I'm going to see much more of interest. We'll see. We'll see if the other scenarios have anything really exciting to offer. All right, up this one goes.